right at the Whitmer Human Resource Center. I'm very proud to introduce to you Gretchen Whitmer.
Well, thank you. And I believe it was said that we enlisted her. I don't think anyone could enlist her and tell her to do anything that she didn't want to do. So we requested, and Mayor, thank you so much for making time to be here. Thank you for inviting me to come and speak. You know, I served 14 years in the Michigan legislature, and all of them were in the minority. I am grateful that I had that opportunity to serve. I thought we fought a lot of really important fights over those years, but I have to tell you, toward the end of it, I thought I've done my public service. I'm going to go back into the private sector and the private life, and very quickly I learned about myself that I have got no patience for poor management. I have got no patience for politicians who play games with problems instead of solving them. And I have zero patience for people who try to lower our expectations and give us false choices. Michigan has a proud history of forging bold territory, of leading the nation. I'm here in Pontiac because I love the city of Pontiac. I've spent so much time here growing up and over my lifetime, and I'll tell you that, you know, my brother and I were looking for old pictures today of when I was a kid growing up. And one of the earliest pictures of me is when I was maybe, I don't know, 8 months old, and I had the Pontiac P on my shirt that was bigger than my chest was. But my grandparents were proud to live in Pontiac and to be from Pontiac. My grandfather, Dana, made education his life's work, but so did my grandmother, Esther. She taught in Waterford schools while my grandfather was superintendent here in Pontiac. In the Whitmer family, you were raised to either be a teacher or a preacher. And I think a lot of teachers are kind of preachers, and a lot of preachers are teachers. And I don't think they're mutually exclusive, but I think the point is that both are a calling. Both are about serving the people who live in your community and putting them first. And that's the family in which I was raised. And as I look around Michigan right now, as I see what we're confronting right now, and as I think about the election result on November 8th, there's been no question in my mind that it is time to get organized. It is time to fight for the future of our state. I can't wait and hope someone else takes up the mantle of public education and fixes the schools. It's on us to do it right now.
Absolutely.
I'm getting warmed up. You know, people forget, I think, in Michigan that we really were leaders in the world at one point. People moved to Michigan because the strongest public school systems on the planet were here. They were here in Pontiac, they were in the Detroit public schools, and they were across the state of Michigan. You knew if you lived in Michigan, your kids were going to have the best education, they were going to be prepared to succeed, they were going to be independent, and they were going to thrive. People moved here because you could get a great job and you could get paid enough to actually afford the car you were making and retire with dignity, knowing that you got your kids off to a start where their quality of life would be even better than your own, which is what every parent wants, and it's what every parent should be able to say that we have. That in Michigan, we had the best roads and infrastructure because we knew our families could travel safely and that we could get our goods moving in Michigan because we set the standard. And our water was the purest and cleanest on the planet. And you think about those four things right now in Michigan. And I've got two daughters who are in the East Lansing Public Schools. I'm proud to be from Michigan. I love this state. I am committed to this state. And you can't love this state and not love the people of this state because that's the most exceptional thing about this state. If I look at my daughters, Michigan, 13 and 15, thinking about what they do when they graduate from high school, and it doesn't even resemble the one that I think about when I talk about how proud I am and how much I love this state. Our schools right now don't even compete with neighbor states. And it's not because we don't have great educators. It's because for too long, our leaders have taken resources away from our schools. For too long, our leaders have changed all the priorities around testing as opposed to achievement and preparation. For too long, our leaders have demonized people whose life work is educating our children. Now, I know Esther and Dana didn't go into teaching because it was lucrative. I know my mother wasn't a teacher in the Lansing Public Schools because she was motivated by money, because they loved children, because it was a passion. And when my 13-year-old daughter, Sydney, says to me, I want to be a teacher, honestly, it is with a mix of pride and concern that I hear that. Because I know right now we do not value and thank and appreciate the people that make that their life's work. And we got to fix that. I know right now that family incomes have been stagnant for decades, where you could have a great quality of life and have a great paycheck and set yourself up for retirement. Right now, too many families can't even make ends meet because our governor boasts job growth, which is just minimum wage paying jobs, and no one is really able to raise a family on the minimum wage as it is in Michigan. But more importantly, 70% of our population has skills for last century. Only 30% is prepared for this century, and that's what we need to focus on. We used to have the most cutting-edge workforce in the world, and now we're behind, and it goes back to education. The water. We're the Great Lakes state. We got 20% of the world's fresh water, and we got a city in Michigan where parents, for 3 years into this, still cannot turn on their taps and bathe their children, much less use it to cook their dinner. You know, when the Flint crisis first broke, one of the things that I thought was important to do was really to get in and help out. I didn't do it for any political reason. It was before I even realized I was going to take this on. But I wanted to be helpful. I took my daughters over because I'm always looking for opportunities to show them what it really means to work in a community and help and pitch in when people need help. But it was talking to a woman who had a daughter who was 18, and she's telling me that for 2 years, the government told her that the water was fine. She said the water was clear, it looked fine, it didn't smell funny, it didn't taste funny. But they kept asking, is this okay? Because knowing that the Flint River was not a clean place to be getting the water from. It's fine, relax. That's what the governor's people said. She finds out later that their water had a ton of lead in it. And she's telling me, my daughter's 15 and 16 during those years, her reproductive organs are forming. What is this going to mean for her life? And possibly for her children's lives, if she is able to have children. You know, you don't have to hear too many of those stories to really understand the impact that governing by balance sheet has had on lives of people in Michigan. So all of these things are issues that have motivated me to say now is the time for us to step up and take back the state, to put people first, to demand accountability of our leaders, to throw leaders out who tell us we shouldn't have high expectations, we shouldn't be privy to internal debates, we shouldn't know their finances, we shouldn't be able to FOIA their emails. They work for us. It is time for us to take it back and demand accountability. It is time for us to set the agenda that puts our kids' education number one, that puts our workers' skills, ensuring that people have paths to careers, number one. And by God, we owe it to everyone in this state to fix the problem in Flint because we're all paying a price for it, but no one as badly as the families in Flint. Those are the things as I think about Michigan and where we could go and the kind of leadership that we deserve. These are tough times. They're scary times for a lot of people. But I'll tell you right now, because of the environment and the craziness in Washington, D.C., right now we are seeing people get engaged in a way that you would never usually see in March of a year and a half before an election. Everywhere I go, people are turning out because it's time to focus this anxiety and this anger and this fear from what's happening in Washington, D.C. into action to make Michigan a leader again. Now, we should still be angry and fearful and mad about what's happening in D.C., but let's channel that energy into making Michigan, rebuilding Michigan, and rebuilding the people and the communities here in Michigan. So, as I travel the state, whether it's, I did a week in the UP in February. No one does that, but I did. And as I got even around the Upper Peninsula, I hit 11 out of 15 counties in the UP. And everywhere we went, the crowds were 4 or 5 times bigger than the organizers expected. That whether it was in Escanaba or it was in Houghton, which is way north from here, we did a potluck at the Super 8 in Houghton, and 150 people showed up. We were wall to wall. The organizer said, I haven't seen this many Democrats in a room since Jim Blanchard was governor. But the point is that people are engaged. And now is our time to not just be angry, but to they say for a movement, you've got to agitate, you've got to educate, and you got to organize. I think Donald Trump is doing the first 2 things for us. So it's on us. I jumped into this race on January 3rd. It was earlier than even I had anticipated doing it, but because of what happened in November, I thought, now's the time. I am running, I am a full-time candidate. I am devoting my life to this because I think it's that important. But also because I think gone are the days that we can make any assumptions. I need to learn as much as I can on the campaign trail. I need to ensure that the platform that we're building really reflects what the people of this state need. I don't think I can count on a Teamsters endorsement to mean every member of the organization is going to vote for me. I got to show up and show people the respect of engaging with them, and then ensuring that this platform really does reflect what we need. We can't assume everyone in a big city or every woman or every community of color is going to vote a certain way. We got to show up and earn their support. And that means talking to everyone who voted for Hillary, everyone who voted for Bernie, everyone who's so mad at the world they voted for no one, and even people who voted for Donald Trump. Thank you. And I will tell you that there's no way that this state went from embracing Barack Obama twice to endorsing the rhetoric that came out of the Trump campaign. I just think that there are a lot of Michiganders who are still hurting and who are still worried about their kids' schooling, who are worried about getting a paycheck that meets their needs and maybe they can sock a little away for retirement, and who've lost faith in government because, frankly, government hasn't worked for a long time in Michigan. And so we're going to earn their votes too, and we're going to run a campaign that's worthy of it. But that starts every day when I get out of bed until the minute I go to bed. I'm thinking about how do we do that? How do we get the government that we deserve, and how do we make sure that we in Michigan are thriving again? So with that, I'll stop the monologue and make it more of a dialogue. I'd love to interact. Love for you. Well, I guess you're ready to. Okay.
Well, first, could you introduce your special guest that's in the back row?
Oh, yes. Okay. So that's my brother, Richard Dana Whitmer. And he's actually wearing one of our grandfather's golf shirts from 1993. He tenderly washes them, or they might disintegrate, I think. But yeah, he's Richard Dana. I'm Gretchen Esther. My grandmother passed away at the age of 100. She lived in her home on Genesee, 43 North Genesee. The Flower Lady, yes. Yeah. Most people knew her as the Flower Lady. She had hot pink impatiens in every window box, and she put window boxes where there were no windows even.
Very good. Well, thank you again for coming. This is our opportunity for her to hear from you and you to hear from her in terms of the back and forth. So if she can't answer the question, I'm sure she won't. I saw Ms. Briggs with a hand, and then Ms. Nelson, and Dr. Stone, and we'll just keep going and going.
Okay. I have 3 questions, so if there are 2 different, the first one should be super easy. Wikipedia says your parents were lawyers. You mentioned that your mother was a teacher. Mm-hmm. Could you clarify that a little bit?
She was both. So she was a teacher for many years, and then after I was born, my sister was born, and then she decided to go to law school. So I've been told tales of my sister and I running around and my mom studying with books. pregnant with that child. So she was an overachiever, and she was, she actually practiced, she was the Assistant Attorney General, one of Frank Kelly's top lawyers in the Attorney General's office. And so my dad was one of Governor Milliken's cabinet members. He was the Commerce Director under Governor Milliken. My mom was one of Frank Kelly's top lawyers, and obviously, you know, my heritage from the Whitmers. So it's a lot of public servants who always taught me that public service is important. I've learned that it's rewarding, but always to know that it's a privilege and to remember that it's about the public. So thanks for the question. That was an easy one. Go ahead. What are the tough ones?
My second one is a tough one.
Yes.
And I'm not trying to make anybody angry, but I'm going to ask it.
Mhm.
In August of 2015, the Michigan Democratic Party, along with 32 other states, entered into an unethical, frankly immoral agreement with the Hillary for Victory Fund, where they came up with a scheme to circumvent campaign finance laws. $26 million was raised this way, where money was given by people who had already hit their campaign maximums, and they gave it directly to the state parties, who then turned around and shipped the money that was intended for Michigan's Democratic Party to the national DNC. And then that money was illegally used in fun ways. My question is, just reassure me of this. Were you involved in that August 2015 meeting? Do you know the people who were? Do you think this was a good idea? Or do you think campaign finance laws are good things? Just tell me any of these things.
Well, let's start with, I think where you're coming from is that you're concerned about campaign finance laws in Michigan.
I'm concerned about campaign finance laws in Michigan. I'm concerned about shipping Michigan money that should have stayed here for supporting our candidates being shipped to the national DNC.
So I totally agree with the spirit of the question.
Mm-hmm.
I was not in office or a part of any of the leadership of the party at that point in time. I'd already been term limited out of the legislature. So I can't speak to it. I don't have firsthand knowledge of any of that. This is actually the first I'm really...
I'll send you the links.
Okay, please do. I can tell you this, that campaign finance is so out of control and repulsive. But I'll also tell you that when I look at a governor's race, that in a state that's got 83 counties and 5 media markets, and I look at someone like Bill Schuette, who I know is going to be the Republican, nominee, and who's got enormous personal wealth on top of all the right-wing supporters he's going to get from around the county. I know that I'm going to work my tail off to make sure that we are able to be somewhat competitive financially. As Democrats, that's hard to do because we don't have the DeVosses on our side. So we can never unilaterally, we can never unilaterally disarm, but I think in order to ensure that we've got integrity in the process and to keep Michigan resources in Michigan, that's a no-brainer. I totally agree.
All right, Ms. Nelson, she's a fellow Virgo to you, Anna V. Nelson of Arnold Avenue in Pontic.
I love these introductions, so interesting.
Gretchen, I just really wanted to dovetail on what you said about the educational level of the Michigan. I was a teacher in the Flint system from 1970 to 2002. And the highlight of my career was on 2 occasions when Japanese educators actually visited the vocational center where I was teaching. They were interested in knowing what we were doing, how we were doing it. We were just getting into computers. It was around 75, between 75 and 80. But it was so strong. And then when I retired in 2002 and everything is kind of, spiraled, don't know what's going on. We do need to return to where we were or even further. And I know the demise of public education started with the academies and the charter schools and that kind of thing. And, I'm here because I don't have the political thick skin that some of us have. I want to be able to hear things, garner information, process it. So I'm a member of the Democratic, the Pontic, I pay my dues, but I haven't been attending the meetings. But after November 2016, for 2 days I could not speak. I literally turned my phone off. My kids were calling me, trying to get a hold. I had nothing to say. I was just so dumbfounded. And then I started saying, okay, what can I do? What do I need to be doing now? You know, I'm getting on up in age, you know, but I got a few more years, you know, what can I do? And so coming to meetings like this, my ears are open to hear what the plan is, and then I stay on the process and see the plan carried out, because see, in our country, the rules move. That's the answer to your question. You know, they change, it depends on what they want to do.
The rules were in place and then they did something different because they
Right,
could.
and that's, I think that's totally.
Oh, we see the Republicans do that all the time, right?
Yeah.
If you can't win by the rules, you change the rules. You don't say that, you know, oh, they won fair and square. You change the rules so you do win. We saw it in redistricting, we saw it with the emergency manager law, we've seen it over and over again. So your question, getting me focused back to education, is, you know, you raised the issue of charters. And I think that you're pinpointing a really important policy change that really has contributed to less and less support for traditional public schools. The DeVos agenda has always been to starve public schools so they fail and send money to their friends in the charter school business. I mean, and they've been very successful at it. It's scary, actually, that someone with that much money, one family in Michigan with that much money, can change the policy for every one of us and our children. It's horrifying, but that's what we're up against. What we're seeing in charter schools, you know, Michigan charter schools, 81% of them, or 84%, it's one of those two numbers, they're for profit. So think about that. These are companies that are operating these, and the motivation is to make a profit. So naturally, what's that going to mean for education for kids? Now, I guess I could maybe, you know, understand the argument for them if they had success. But they're not getting our kids into any better position than they would have been at the public schools. And in fact, it's worse for a lot because they open, they close, they change. If you got transportation, you might have a choice, but many kids don't have transportation, so it's not a real choice. And it's certainly not a quality choice. When you look across this country and you think about the next state with the next highest level of for-profit charter schools, you know what their percentage is? 12%. So that shows you how way out of line Michigan is. And it's our kids that are paying a price for it. I don't know how many of you saw the Free Press did an article a few weeks ago talking about how growth in proficiency in Michigan is the worst in the United States. It's not because of the teachers. It's because of the policies that have come and over again. So there are a number of things that I'm proposing on the school front, but one is accountability in charter schools. You know, we got to make sure if any taxpayer dollar is going to a school for a child, we got to make sure that it's working and that it's not going into someone's pocket for profit. Tennessee is the state that is having the greatest improvement on their school systems. They've outlawed for-profit charter schools.
All right.
Maybe that's why.
So we've got about 8 people whose hand, I see you, Dr. Gupta, I see you with
Okay,
white.
early childhood education and access to college affordability, and treating teachers like professionals. Those are things that are important to teachers.
So essentially, limit your question to 10 seconds. Or be brief. It's my point that there are many people who would like to get the question. Dr. Stone is next.
You know the trouble that Pontiac schools is in. Matter of fact, we're going up to April 14th and confront this committee that wants to close the school. What kind of plan do you have, or what kind of way to develop a plan that you can give a school system like this the same amount of money that a Birmingham or Bloomfield Hills school can have? Because that's one of the big problems, is how the school system is made to perform with less and less money.
The children shouldn't be valued differently based on their zip code. It's really that simple. And school districts that are struggling, states that are really good at turning them around, invest more resources in them. They don't shut them down.
Absolutely.
And so I absolutely oppose the governor's plan to shut down schools. I'm glad to see a lot of districts are suing him to keep the schools open. The answer is you don't just cut ties and eliminate options and abandon children. You put more resources in to make it work and to give them the support that they need. There are, many districts have got many different challenges, when kids are, you've got a greater percentage of kids that are eligible for the free and reduced lunch. That in and of itself tells you that that's a school that needs more resources and more supports for the children. That's what you do when you've got a school that's struggling. You don't close them down. So that's my philosophy. Those are the values that I would take with me to the governor's office, and you can be darn sure that I would never close down a school that we didn't think was succeeding. We owe it to the children a lot better than what they're getting right now, that's for sure.
Dr. Ashok Gupta?
Thank you. Thanks for coming. This is a great town. I've been for 40 years. I will change the topic. What about